can't believe it took me forever to figure it out. Some of the things that we deal with in life, we make them a lot more complicated than they should be. And I'm sure all of you could relate to being on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or any of these other places where you're watching video. And if within the first few seconds, maybe 5 seconds, 7 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever the number is, if you're not engaged right away with that video, you're probably not going to watch it. And so we all know that. We all know that you need to make the first few moments of a video to be engaging. Problem is, with that being so basic, when we write or when we're like a podcast, if there's audio involved, if it's we forget about making it engaging to begin with. So like when we write our MLS remarks, we'll write a bunch of stuff and then we'll get into the meat of what we're saying, and then it'll be so many comments on the MLS are like as you get into the house, or just a different variation of that, however engaging they want to try and make it, but that's not really engaging. So what I learned, and this is what I learned, the basic thing is to make sure whatever I'm using, whether it's written word or it's creating a podcast, always make engaging in the very beginning. I learned a long time ago, and someone told me this, a professional speaker, they taught me this, and they said, like, if they go on stage and there's a crowd and the people don't really know who he is, but maybe they barely know who he is or heard of him before, but they aren't very familiar with that person. That person says, "Hi, my name is John Smith and I'm from so and so." People don't care. They're going to tune him out. But instead, if he starts with an engaging story, after he gets into a part where they're engaged, and then he says, "My name is John Smith, I'm from so and so," then they're going to care. People aren't going to care who you are until they care what you say. And with that said, I know I asked a bunch of you guys if you'd like to learn how to do a podcast. And originally I was going to do a webinar, but I figured it may be easier to just do a video and some links, and then whatever questions you may have, you could either call me or just comment below or DM me, whichever way is easiest for you. So I've been doing podcasts for, I don't know, maybe, let me put it a different way. So I've been doing podcasts for about 2 years, but I've done, I think, 70 podcasts because they're super easy. And whenever we start something new, we always think about perfection and trying to be, just make sure it's perfect. And it doesn't need to be perfect, because no matter what we have done in our life, at least most of us anyways, I don't know if you're listening to this and you're different than that, but whoever it is, whatever you're doing in life, you always start off slow, like, how you crawl, then you walk, then you run. When you play any sport, you're not good at it, then you get better at it. Even when we learned to talk, we couldn't say anything, then words, and then sentences, and then we're able to speak. So with that said, whatever we do, even if you're doing real estate, you probably weren't great in the beginning unless you were fortunate, which is a very, very small percentage. So have that attitude about, don't worry about being perfect, but just worry about doing it. And the more you do, it's less critical how good it is. So for example, in my 70 podcasts that I've done, because I've done them pretty often, if I do one and it's poor, meaning I didn't think it was that great, or someone told me it wasn't that great, people tend to not tell you that, but once in a while they will. But in any event, if I do a podcast today and it's not that great, and then 3 days later I do another one, it doesn't matter about the one I did before, the other ones I did before, because if I'm consistently creating content, it doesn't matter as much than if I only did 2 podcasts. Those 2 podcasts better be really good, because if someone goes online and they see my 2 podcasts and they're not good, maybe, I don't know, everyone thinks differently, but maybe that person is going to think that I'm not good at real estate, I'm not good at marketing, I'm not going to get people engaged with my home, whatever they're going to think. So just don't worry about being perfect, and just worry about doing more of these, and never, ever, ever worry about how many views, likes, comments, shares, or any of that you have. Worry more about the content that you're going to create. So with that said, first of all, this isn't the studio in the back. Obviously it's Zoom, it's a virtual background. And I wanted to make a point about that. With podcasts, a lot of people get so concerned about about the hardware. Maybe they need a microphone, maybe they need a studio, maybe they need all these other things. And at the end of the day, you don't. All you need is a quiet room, some AirPods, and I mean, they could even be wired, it doesn't matter, and just an idea. That's it. So the first thing you need to do is you need to go to whether you have an Android or iPhone, go to your app store. So I'm going to share my screen with you and show you how the app looks. So when you go to the app store, you're going to look for something called Anchor. It's going to look like this. And if you are in, see, if you are on Google, if you have an Android, it would look like this. Okay, super easy. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. So anyways, you download that app. So for all of you that have never heard of Anchor, I'm sure you've heard of the company that owns Anchor. It's called Spotify. I think everyone has heard of Spotify. So Anchor used to be a service by itself. Everything I'm going to teach you is free, so you don't have to spend a penny. Okay, so Anchor was this free podcasting app, and because it was so super easy to do, professionally sounding podcasts were were made so easily. Because of that, Spotify bought them, I believe, last year. So whenever you do what I'm going to tell you, when you create these podcasts, it's going to go into multiple platforms. I think it's going to be 9, and it's going to do it automatically. So when you create a podcast, it's first going to go to the Anchor app. Then I think simultaneously, it's like an instant, it's going to be on Spotify. Then it's going to be on iTunes, and there's other ones that I've never even heard of, but it'll go there. Google has one, and I think there's one Streamer. There's quite a few, but it automatically goes there. So what I'm going to do to make this easy, I think it's going to be easy, is first tell you the dynamics, the background, I guess the guide to how to create a podcast. And then after that, I'm going to answer some questions that I've been asked many times. I've mentioned before, I'm fortunate. I get a lot of agents that reach out to me weekly, whether it's from Compass around the country or anywhere around the world. Sometimes I have people from Belgium, people from France, and other multiple brokers contact me. And it's not because I'm really good at anything, it's just because I create content. And when you create content, people get to know who you are by what you create. So anyways, the questions that I answer are going to be the questions that I've been asked by probably, I don't know, I've probably shared with about 30 people, give or take, on how to create podcasts. So I'm going to share those commonly asked questions and answers after I tell you how to actually create a podcast. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to download that app, the Anchor app. And it's super easy to register. You could connect through Facebook to automatically register. I think Google, just multiple different ways, like a lot of apps allow you to do. So once you do that and you have an idea, and again, I'm going to share with you ideas, length, just a bunch of things that don't worry about that until later when I share it with you. So once you have an idea of what you're going to create for the podcast, the next thing you're going to do is, like I mentioned, you're going to go into a quiet room. Could even be your car. Just make sure wherever you are there's not an echo because it'll sound sort of weird. So then once you get to that quiet room, put on these AirPods or your wired um, I mean AirPods or whichever one you use. You don't need a fancy microphone. You don't need a fancy headphones. You don't need any of that. You can if you want, but I would be more concerned if you're dying to spend money on something, spend it on something else. Spend it on promoting your podcast, or spend it on getting a gift for a client that you haven't spoken to in a while. It's going to be a lot better use of the money than spending it on stuff that you don't need to spend it on for a podcast. So anyways, you're in this quiet room, you have your AirPods on, you go to the app. The first thing you do is it's pretty basic. I think it says a plus, or it's like a record button, like a red button. So all you do is you press it and it'll start recording. And then if you mess up, you can just press stop, you can discard it. And once you're done recording, anyways, you're going to be able to preview it. So don't worry about that. So you start again, you start talking about whatever it is. And I'll tell you how to best practices later. Okay. So you record whatever you're going to talk about. After you record it, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to press stop. Pretty basic. You're recording, you press stop. The next thing you're going to do, you're going to have an option. And this is sort of important. There are options to add music, background music. I would recommend adding background music to it, especially if all you're doing is talking, and there's no other music within the podcast. If there's music within the other podcast, for whatever reason, if you have background music playing or while you're speaking, then don't add music. But typically you would add music. And there's probably 50 or 100 different things of background music that you can add, and it'll make it sound professional. It sounds way better. And then so once you add that soundtrack or that music in the background, you're going to be able to hear how it sounds, and you're going to be impressed. You're going to be like, wow, I sound pretty good, or it sounds better than I thought it would, whichever way. Don't be critical of yourself either, and don't try and make it perfect. Just do it, because at the end of the day, once you do it, the odds are, unless you promote it and share it with people, hardly anyone is going to see it. So don't worry about that. Not see it, I guess, see it and hear it. So anyways, so let's go back. You're in the room, you have your AirPods, you have the app, you press the record button. After the record, you press stop. After you press stop, you added some music to it, you previewed it. The next thing you do is it's going to ask you for a title of the podcast. So you're going to write down whatever you want to call it. After that, there's another thing you'll do, super easy, describe it. It's going to be like a couple sentences or so. And then next thing you can add, I think it's 5 tags to it. So if it's like on coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever it's on, that's what you're going to do. So after that, this is like super easy. You press publish. That's it. You're done. You've published your podcast. Okay, so now that you know how to create a podcast, I'm going to answer some frequently asked questions. So one of them is, what does the podcast need to be on? So I would recommend the first podcast you do, make it about something that you're passionate about. Don't make it about real estate unless you are very passionate about real estate and you can make it sound exciting. Because at the end of the day, we all have friends and relatives that will listen to our content or will like, love, share our posts on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is. But if it's just always on real estate, they're just doing that because they're nice. They don't want to hear everything about real estate all the time. It's not interesting to most people. Even our buyers who are like totally motivated about real estate, they're not going to read everything about real estate or watch or listen to everything about real estate. So don't don't put people in a position where what you create is just, it's gonna benefit you. And at the end of the day, it's not gonna benefit you because no one is gonna want to listen to it. So the first podcast, if you like nutrition or running, talk about that. If you like sports, talk about that. Whatever you like, talk about. So Jade on our team, she likes to run. So she could do a podcast on running, and she's done many podcasts as well. So and when she does them, it's on different things. So try and do that as well. Like my podcasts that have done the best are a mixture of real estate and my life. So one of them, I'm 51, and last year I turned 50. And right before I turned 50, I did a podcast on turning 50 and just my gratitude and happiness about, about my life. And another one I did last year, it was my mom's birthday. I wasn't sure what to get her because I don't know, she's been blessed and she has everything she wants. And so besides getting her a gift, I don't even know if she liked the gift or not. I thought, you know what, let me tell the whole world how much I love my mom. And I did a podcast on my mom. I shared it with her. And, it was such an incredible experience because she shared it with all her friends. She never told me that, but my sister told me that. And it actually brought her to tears when she listened to it, and she was proud. So it made me nice. And I know it wasn't a professional podcast. It was just speaking from my heart and talking about it. So next question is, what is the length of a podcast? How long should it be? So it's it's a very easy answer because we overthink things a lot. So we're thinking about algorithms, we're thinking about, what is the most engaging length of a post, but don't think about that because I'm sure a lot of you have seen videos on Instagram or Facebook, and after 2 or 3, or even on TikTok, and after 2 or 3 seconds, you were bored and you got rid of it. But there are also videos or even things that you've listened to or audiobooks that after, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, you are still engaged in it and you still want to keep watching or listening to it. And when it was done, you wished it was longer. So the length of your podcast is just the length of how engaging your content is. So if it's something you're very passionate about and some other people will be passionate about it, you don't worry about the length so much. So like, I'll give you an example. Like if you like a sports team, the first thing, let me go back a step. You don't want to make the podcast for everyone, because if you're trying to appeal to everyone, you're going to appeal to no one because it's going to be very vanilla and very bland. And there are multiple things that people can be interested in because everyone is so different. So for example, for me, the way I'm able to engage people are in multiple different avenues. One, I'm Indian. So Indians will sometimes be interested in my content. I'm Indian American. So Indian Americans may be interested in my content. I'm 51. So people in their 50s or around my age will be interested in my content. Some of them, when I say they will be, I'm saying a small percentage, but it's a partial piece of my audience. Another thing is I love sports. I love the Miami Dolphins. I love the Miami Heat. I love the University of Miami Hurricanes. I love, my sports teams. I love tennis. So people can identify me because of that. I work for Compass. So as you guys know, people either love Compass or hate Compass. It's like our politics. It's polarizing. But because it's Compass, it's like Trump, and I'm not going to give an opinion on Trump, but people either love him or hate him. But regardless if they love him or they hate him, he's polarizing. So people tend to watch what it is, whatever it is about him, to either like him more or to hate him more. So when we have content, so if you do anything on Compass, it usually does pretty well. Also, another thing is I love to eat. So I could talk about food. I love family. I could talk about my family, just multiple things. Obviously, real estate, we can talk about real estate. So there's so many things like that we can do as far as content. Okay, so another thing people will ask me is, what should it be on? So besides all those things that I mentioned that aren't real estate related, what you can do for real estate is every day when we have our clients, there are different pain points that we have, whether they have an issue with an appraisal, inspection, getting approved for financing, negotiating, whatever it is, whatever the issue is, um, there's always a pain point. So do the content on those pain points and pretend you're a consumer listening to this, and it would answer those problems. So back to the engaging part. When you start your podcast, start it from the beginning. I mean, don't start from the beginning saying like, I'm John Smith, I work for Compass, and I'm in LA. No one cares about that. Instead, talk about it like this. Like, for example, it's food. Say it's like a dish you're eating and you're talking about, you're gonna do a podcast on a restaurant. Don't say that, hey, I'm in so-and-so restaurant. You could say like, I was starting to feel sad. It was my last bite. I knew it was almost over. And although I was full, I wanted to, I I wanted to, I'm sorry, I got distracted a second. Let me start that again. So say it's a restaurant, or let's do another one. Say it's running, okay? Say you're passionate about running, or working out, and what happens is, regardless of how passionate we are about that, to work out or to run, we a lot of times we don't want to do it at that moment because we're lazy or tired. So it could be an example like this. I was lacing up my shoes. I really didn't want to do this. I wanted to, I knew that I needed to, but I really, really didn't want to do it. And after I started running for the first five, 5 or 10 seconds, I knew I made the wrong decision. I should have stayed at home. I shouldn't have run. But then you know what? After about 20, 30, 40 seconds, I started feeling better. And then maybe after a minute, after my first mile, I was excited. I knew that I totally made the right decision and whatever. So whenever you create content, and that wasn't good, but I'm just trying to give you the idea of how to start. And then once you do that, then later, once you have the content and it's engaging, then later say that my name's Amit, I work for Compass, I live in Miami Beach, and whatever you're going to say. Don't pitch. This is branding. It's not to pitch. If you're doing real estate, besides those items that you said, if you're going to talk about a house, maybe talk about something exciting, like as far as your 5 favorite homes in the area. And you don't, it's when you talk about real estate, because it's a podcast and it's not so visual, it doesn't really work that well unless you do like pain points, and you can do that, or you link up something to your podcast. Another thing that you can do is, you probably already have podcasts that you can make right now without even doing a podcast. So what Anchor allows you to do, and I'm going to share my screen with you a second. Um, so let me go back. So I messed up there. Let me share again. Share my screen. Okay, there's Anchor and share. So let's see this. Hang on one sec. Technical difficulties, but I think I can get there. Okay, so online, if you go on desktop, go on Anchor. Don't go on anchor.com because it's going to take you to something else. So this is my podcast. So let me go here. So all you do is you create new episode. So this is how you do it online. So what you can do is, if you have a video, what you can do, and especially if the video it has good content where you don't need the visuals that much. I don't know if you guys can relate to this, where you're actually watching a YouTube video, but you stop watching it and you just listen to it. And a lot of people do that. And that's why there are multiple shows and multiple people, like millions of people, will, for a show that they create that's a video, they're going to also have the same audio version of it in a podcast. And a lot of times it'll be missing the video, but it doesn't really matter because you're more than anything, you're listening to it. So anyways, with this podcast, and I'll tell you like the benefits of the podcast when I finish this in a sec. But when you do a podcast, and so back to that video that you did, we've all done videos, and I'm not talking about the listing videos where it's like drone and then a walkthrough in the house, but just like a regular video where you're talking about something or interviewing someone. If you go on Google and you look up free tool strip audio from video, you'll be able to find a bunch of them. And if you need help, just message me and I'll share with you a link to one. And if I remember, I'll link it up to this post. But anyways, you can strip your audio from the video and you can save it on a file on your computer. So then the next thing you would do is you'd go on this page and it would be like create your episode. And when you create, it's this part, when you're trying to create the episode, you can do that, or you can press this, click to upload, and then it will find whatever is on your screen and it'll try and find something. So it's super easy. You can upload whatever you want, and then it gives you the same option where you can add background music, and then you can also do the title, the description, and the tags. So the last thing I'm gonna do, and I hope this helped you guys, and sorry if it's a bit long, I just wanted to make sure I went over a lot of the details. So people will ask me, what are the benefits of the podcast? You know, because if they're thinking it's not going to be that professional, or they're not sure of the content, why should you do a podcast? The reason you should do a podcast are a few reasons. So one of the reasons is people consume content differently. Some people love to read, some people like to listen to podcasts, and some people like to watch videos. So you always want to have the best chance of engaging with the most people with your same content, especially if you've done it already. So it might as well be on multiple platforms. The next thing, then other reason is, as far as podcasts, why you want to do it, you always have to assume that someone is going to be Googling you who's thinking about doing business with you. So for example, if I had a friend and they saw me, they were trying to, so let me go back steps. So there's a friend, so say I have a friend in New York, and that friend meets another friend at a party, and they want to sell their house in Miami Beach. And that person, my friend in New York, recommends this person that wants to sell their house in Miami Beach to me. They recommend me to them. And they don't know me, they just have my name and number. Before they ever call me to do business, they are going to Google me. And at that time, one or two things is going to happen. They're going to find a ton of content I have, and they're going to look at it, and they're going to be excited about, calling me, or they're going to find zero content on me, or just very random small stuff. And usually when you don't have that much content, usually they find the content you don't want them to find. So create a lot of content, pretend like they're going to Google search you. And then when they Google search you, if they see this content that you have, they're probably going to click your podcast, your videos, however they consume the content, they're going to do it. And just because people don't necessarily comment like on our posts, it doesn't mean they're not consuming it. So like with my podcast, I haven't had that many views. I think maybe 5,000 to 6,000, not views, listens on it. So it's not that many, but I've got deals from it. I've had people call me and they told me how they loved my podcast on my mom, or they told me about something real estate related. And so don't worry about the numbers. Never worry about the numbers. Just worry about that connection with that person. And I hope I answered all your questions about podcasts. And if you have whatever other ones you have, you can at any time call me. My number is 305 439 3031. You can find me on any social media platform, hashtag the Indian Realtor, or you can just comment below. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Love you guys.